Please welcome the 19th President of the George Washington University, Dr. Ellen Granberg.
Well, good evening, everyone. What a night, and it is so great to see the hall full. It's a wonderful pleasure to welcome you all to the George Washington University and to tonight's event, which we are presenting in partnership with the Politics and Prose bookstore. For years, GW's location in the heart of the nation's capital, our leadership in fields like health, public policy, law, and international affairs, and our unique partnership with Politics and Prose have created a series of remarkable Only at GW events. Together, we have hosted conversations with former Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton, former Secretary of Defense James Mattis, TV host Rachel Maddow, actor and GW alumna Kerry Washington, and most recently, the authors Doris Kearns Goodwin and Malcolm Gladwell. This evening, we are honored to host another fantastic speaker whose achievements and life story continue to inspire so many young athletes across the country and, of course, here at GW. 9-time Olympic gold medalist and 2024 Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient, Katie Ledecky. Katie is joining us tonight in conversation with MSNBC host and 2024 GW commencement speaker Jen Psaki. And I would be remiss not to mention that Katie's uncle, John Ledecky, shares the distinction of being a GW honorary degree recipient alongside Jen. Jen and Katie, I want to personally thank you for joining us tonight. It is such a pleasure to welcome you to campus. Now, to introduce tonight's discussion, I would like to welcome the co-owner of Politics and Prose bookstore, Lissa Muscatine, to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. What a great crowd, and so many kids. It's awesome to see, and you're all here on a school night, which is great. Thank you, President Granberg, for that lovely introduction. It's really great to be back here at GW. As President Granberg said, we at Politics and Prose cherish our partnership with the university and with all the faculty, students, and administrators who make up this great campus and community and enable us to bring books and authors to the heart of DC. So we are so grateful for the partnership, and it now has been going on for a number of years, and we just hope it continues and continues. And thanks to all of you for being here and for supporting your local independent bookstore, Politics and Prose. And just before we get going, I want to say a couple things about Politics and Prose before we get underway. We are celebrating our 40th anniversary this year, and thank you. And we are proud now to have retail stores in 3 of DC's 4 quadrants, providing venues for civic discourse and a marketplace for ideas throughout our community. This is and will always be our mission. And on that point, I don't think I need to tell any of you, no matter how young you are, that in 2 weeks there's going to be an election in this country. Americans are going to be going to the polls, and we've heard a lot during this campaign about freedom. Many freedoms are on the ballot this year. But one freedom that gets less attention than others is the freedom to read the books you want to read. The freedom to explore stories and authors as diverse as our country. And that freedom has been under attack in recent years through efforts to ban books, silence teachers and librarians, and exclude from the literary canon works of fiction and nonfiction that certain people just don't agree with. And that is a threat to your and all of our freedoms. So I hope in this election year, with so much on the line, you'll think about standing up for freedom in all its manifestations, including the freedom to read books. And to that end, we thank you for your continuing support of your local independent bookstores here in Washington and across the country. Books and bookstores are lifebloods of democracy. And speaking of books, let's move on to the reason you're really here, to hear Katie Ledecky discuss her new book, Just Add Water, My Swimming Life. We're thrilled to host Katie tonight with GW. She, of course, I don't need to tell this audience, is a Bethesda native and a hero to so many in our area. I think to a lot of people in this room. And we are also now proud to claim her as a local author. And it would take all night to list Katie's accomplishments as the greatest female swimmer of all time. The highlights: 9 Olympic gold medals, including just at the Paris Games this past summer, 21 world championships. She won her first gold at age 15 and plans to compete possibly at the Los Angeles Games in 2028. That would be her 5th Olympic Games. And something that you may not know, earlier this year, Katie was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom at the ripe old age of 27. She's a graduate of Stanford University, and now, to add to her resume, as I mentioned a minute ago, she's a published author. In her book, Just Add Water, she recounts her life as a swimmer and what it's taken to reach the many milestones of her career. The people who have supported her, the technical training and tweaks to her strokes, the hours and hours in the pool, the lessons learned. Hers has been a fascinating journey throughout, and as you can imagine, her book is fascinating too. And we're delighted, as President Granberg mentioned, to have in conversation with Katie tonight another familiar face in this area. Jen Psaki is a veteran of government and communications, having served as State Department spokesperson and then White House communications director in the Obama administration. She then became White House press secretary on the day that President Biden was inaugurated in 2021. After serving in that role, she switched careers to become a television commentator and is now host of MSNBC's Inside with Jen Psaki. And Jen, too, has written a book. It came out last spring, and it's called Say More: Lessons from Work, the White House, and the World. Let me just say, if gold medals were awarded for communication savvy and political commentary, she'd have more than a few, too. Please join me in welcoming Katie Ledecky and Jen Psaki.
Okay, I mean, I am also freaking out about being here with Katie Ledecky, so I'm going to try to be cool for all of us. But yes, I have all of the same feelings that you are feeling going through my veins right now. So let me start with this. I read this book. It is so good. And not just because if you're a swimming nerd, which a lot of people in here I'm sure are, but because it is so humanizing about who you are and what drives you and who's important to you in your life. That's why I loved it. That's why you should buy it for like your person you swim in a lane with, but also your grandma and your mom and your cousin. And Christmas is coming up. Okay. I say that because I want to start with, we're going to get into all the swimming nerdy things, don't you worry. But I do want to start with who Katie is. Because she is an amazing swimmer, but she is a wonderful human being, and you can know that by spending a few minutes with her, but also just by reading her book. So let's start there. We're going to call this a warm-up. Get it, guys? Do you see what I did there?
You always have to warm up.
You always have to warm up. Katie arrives early for practice. You learn that in the book. Okay, first of all, this is a hard one. Who are the Palisades porpoises? Oh, they're here.
I saw some Palisades porpoises
The
right
porpoises
when I walked
are
in.
here. Why are they important to you? If you feel like you want to do the cheer or the song, everybody's going to support you, but no pressure. But who are they? They're an important part of your book and your origin story.
Yes, so I started swimming for the Palisades porpoises in the Montgomery County Swim League when I was 6 years old. I'm sure we have some other Montgomery County Swim League swimmers in the crowd too. Yes, we had a cheer called Rip Ram. Rip, ram, row, scram, yell, scream, roar, whoop, Palisades, Palisades forever, more whoop, whoop it up, gangway, give it all you got, whoop, Palisades, Palisades. All right, you get the point.
I didn't know she'd actually do it, but that's like it lives in your veins.
So it's in my veins. Summer league swimming meant a lot to me. Definitely where I got my start. Actually, one of my first summer league swim coaches was in Paris, which was really special. And I have such great memories of being on the team with some of my best friends to this day, and learning the strokes, learning how to breathe and freestyle. All of those little things I vividly remember so clearly at the Palisades pool.
So for any of the summer team swimmers, guys, I mean, you never know, right? Your cheer may be different. Okay, Bruce Springsteen is a very important person in your family. And I saw your dad. I know your dad is the ultimate Bruce Springsteen guy, but important to you too. Why so important?
Yeah, I mean, about 50% of my dad chapter in the book is about Bruce Springsteen. So he is a pretty important person in my family's life. Lots of Bruce Springsteen songs on the way to and from swim practices and swim meets. Definitely inherited the love of Bruce Springsteen from my dad, and going to and from practices. I know there are probably a lot of swim parents in the crowd. Sometimes the drives can get a little long, sometimes you can get stuck in traffic, and it's always good to have a good playlist. So my dad and I loved creating playlists together, and he would always add in some new Bruce Springsteen songs, and I would add in some songs that I was hearing about at school, and just created a great playlist that was a mix of Bruce Springsteen, Lady Gaga, Pink, a very random mix when it came down to it.
Do you have a favorite Bruce song?
So we really love the song Badlands, because how many of you have swum at the pool called Fairland? Yeah? Okay.
Oh, a lot.
There's this pool in Virginia called Fairland, and we used to have so many meets there, and we used to change the lyrics from Badlands to Fairland. So, Fairland, you gotta live it every day. It was just that's just a great memory that I have, and of course, we could go on and on.
I promise I didn't warn Katie. I was going to ask her to sing multiple times. Yeah. You can keep singing.
Okay.
But, okay. Now, just in case you think Katie is good at everything, how old were you when you learned how to ride a bike? I learned this in the book too.
Well, I did learn.
Maybe you're a good biker now, to be fair.
I did learn when I was younger, but then there were many, many years where I didn't ride a bike. And so before I went off to Stanford, I had to learn how to ride a bike again, because I knew that was going to be my mode of transportation around Stanford. And it's actually funny, I knew how to deconstruct a bike, because during the social action days that I had at Stone Ridge School of the Sacred Heart in high school, I could deconstruct the bike with Mr. Woodard, who I see here.
Look at
that. But I didn't know how to ride a bike. So my brother had to teach me how to ride a bike the month before I went off to start my freshman year at Stanford.
I love that. Yeah. Okay, and we're going to get into your family, but now, this is my last warm-up question. So,
okay.
In what state is there a pool dedicated to your Grandpa Hagen?
North Dakota. In Williston, North Dakota, there's a pool named after my Grandpa Hagen. He was very instrumental in Williston, North Dakota, in there being a pool built years ago. He served on the park board and really felt it was important for everyone in the town to learn how to swim. He was a physician. And really saw that was important after actually one of my mom's sisters almost drowned. I mean, she fell into a lake on a family vacation, and all of my mom's siblings ended up swimming. My mom swam through college, and so there was this pool that was named after my grandpa, and then there was a new facility, a huge rec center that opened up a few years ago, well, I guess 10 years ago now, that they named it after him as well, and I got to swim the first lap with my cousins, so that was really, really special.
Very cool. I know there are some cousins here too,
yes.
Right?
Connor,
Some Ledecky
Sean,
cousins.
Sarah. Yep.
We love it. Okay, you in your book, you have a chapter on each of your grandparents. And I think this is, are there any swimming grandparents here? There probably are. Grandparents of swimmers? There may be. Oh, right in the front row. Okay, grandma of swimmers. But I thought this was so special because you seem to draw something from each of your grandparents. Talk to me a little bit about why, and all of us, about why you chose to do a chapter on each, and kind of what did you take from each of your grandparents? You talked about your Grandpa Hagen. What about the other three?
Yeah, well, I think the reason why they're so prominently featured in the book is because I do always get asked kind of, how have you been able to have this career? And my parents always get asked, what does Katie eat? Or, they're always looking for secrets. And to me, I think the biggest secret, it's not a secret, that I have is that I have these 4 incredible grandparents that I've gotten to know throughout my life. And my Grandpa Hagen, big community leader in the small town in North Dakota, served in World War II as a Navy surgeon assigned to the Navy doctor assigned to the Marines, served in some of the bloodiest battles in the Pacific theater. So just kind of a living legend that I got to be around all the time, and to hear his stories from my mom and all my family members. Just such a tough guy and such a loving and caring person that I got to be around in North Dakota. And then he's married to my Grandma Hagen, who is still living in North Dakota. She turns 99 in January. Yeah. Amazing. And I feel so lucky that I've had so many years with her. I feel so close to her. We FaceTime very often, and again, just such a loving and caring person. And she and my grandpa always made the holidays very special. We would often spend Christmas there with my cousins, and it was just such a magical time. And my grandma was a nurse. She met my grandpa in North Dakota. My grandma had grown up in Montana with a lot of her cousins and her family. And just the family that I have on my mom's side of the family, it's a large family, lots of cousins. And we just always support each other. I had a lot of them in Paris cheering me on. So that's the one side of the family. And then my grandfather on my dad's side, my Grandpa Jerry, defected from Czechoslovakia in the 1940s when the Soviets entered there, and came over to the U.S. with $5 on a scholarship to Rutgers, and worked really, really hard, worked night shifts at the Howard Johnsons, and just worked his way up, and ultimately got his PhD in economics. I think he was learning his 7th language on his deathbed. Just loved to learn, and I think that's the biggest thing I took from him. And I wasn't the one. I always admired my brother in how my brother would always talk to my grandpa about the history, and my brother did a really great job of pulling a lot out of my grandfather about his story and his family, and all the things that he experienced when he came to the U.S. And then ultimately he was able to go back to the Czech Republic not until the late 80s, early 90s. So many, many years he was away from his family, and we were able to celebrate his 80th birthday in Prague together back in 2007. And then my grandma Berta, who just passed a few years ago, just an incredible woman, incredible writer, wrote a lot of short stories, and again, just such a loving and caring person, just always talked to people, and just loved everyone that she met. She was always a friend, always looking out for other people and helping other people, and she definitely did that in my life, and she continues to inspire me. And just, again, the time that I've had with my grandparents has been so special, and they're people that I think about a lot when I compete. I talk a lot about how during the 1500 free in Tokyo, I was in Tokyo with no family members there. It was during the pandemic, and I had just had a pretty tough race in the 200 free about an hour before the 1500 free final, and I knew that I had to get my mind right going into this distance race that I was the favorite in, and I just all of a sudden started thinking about my grandparents, and especially my two grandmothers that I knew were watching back at home in the US, and I decided to just repeat their names over and over in my head during the race, and I think that filled me with so much love, all of their love, and reminded me of how tough they are, and that I have some of their toughness, and that's something that I wanted to display in that race.
It's this is such a beautiful part of the book, because it's like, where do you come from? Well, it's not just from the pool. That's a big part of it. But you come from the origin of all the people in your life, and that's such a piece that comes through. Okay, this is not as an emotional and of a question, but everybody wants to know, and you already touched on it. What did your mom feed you as a child? Oh. You talk about this.
Oh, everyone knows.
You talk about this in the book.
My mom is actually very embarrassed that I put this in the book, because she thinks that it reflects poorly on her. But I think the exact opposite. I think it was a brilliant move. So for those of you that don't know, at some point my mom was reading some articles about what to feed young swimmers, probably growing swimmers. She was always trying to keep up on the latest nutritional advice. And again, a lot of people would ask my mom, what do you feed your kids? And she would often say, oh, strawberries are on sale right now, so strawberries. But she read at some point something in there about how low-fat Greek yogurt is a good snack before practice. And I have no idea how it turned into low-fat chocolate ice cream. But for one whole season, maybe even longer than that, I was having chocolate ice cream before morning practice. So at 4:15 in the morning, I was having chocolate ice cream. And it sounds silly, but I think it was brilliant, because it was probably one of the first years that I had morning practice. And I think it was one of those things that got me out of bed in the morning. I have always been someone to shut my alarm off right when it goes off, and I go through my routine, I brush my teeth, I put my clothes on, I have my snack, and I go to practice. And it just so happened that my snack was chocolate ice cream for about a year.
Okay, how many aspiring Katie Ledeckys in the room? And you
now
can
everyone's going to be eating chocolate ice cream.
You can give a show of hands. I see a few in the front row here. Think that maybe chocolate ice cream should be the pre-swimming snack.
Be careful, okay? In moderation, everything in moderation.
Katie Ledecky told you this, guys, right? So this is like, go tell your mom,
But also the strawberries. Don't forget the strawberries.
With strawberries. Okay, I'm just going to add, I love this because there's so much pressure on young people in sports today. And the other thing that is a takeaway from this book is how normal your parents kept your life. And you are who you are, and you've won all these medals, and they did that. So that is this is a book that every parent of an aspiring high-level athlete should also read. Okay. Coaches. You also have a chapter on each of your coaches, which I thought was so amazing. One, because we've all heard of all these coaches, so you want to learn about the coaches, but also because you seem to learn something from each of them. So you have a chapter, you kind of go chronologically, of course. Let's start with Yuri, who obviously was an important coach, and for anybody who hasn't read it or hasn't followed this closely, was Katie's coach when she made her first Olympic team. You talk in there about how he pushed you to kind of say your goals out loud. Or this was one of my takeaways. I don't mean to 1,000 people, but to him. Mm-hmm. Why is that important? And what else did you learn from him?
Yeah, that was definitely a big moment for me, a big meeting that I had with my coach Yuri. It was in the fall of 2011, and I had qualified for Olympic trials at the time, and I was maybe ranked 4th or 5th in the country in 2 or 3 events, and to qualify for the Olympics the next summer in 2012, I would have to place in the top 2 in my events at the Olympic trials. So it was kind of a possibility, but we hadn't really talked about it, and so we were talking about the season ahead and the different technical things I needed to work on and all the different meets that I would go to. And he said to me, now, Katie, what would be the ultimate goal at Olympic trials? And I wasn't the best at communicating with him, or I was a little shy, and I kind of, I don't know, rolled back in my chair and was like, oh, I don't know. He said, Katie, what would be the ultimate goal at Olympic trials? And I said, oh, make the Olympic team. And he said, yeah, say it again. And I said, make the Olympic team. And he said, we don't have to talk about it anymore the whole year. We don't even have to tell your family. We don't have to tell any other coaches. It can just be between us. But that's what we're working toward. And that was really the moment when someone told me that they believed I could make an Olympic team. I hadn't written that down as a goal when I was 6 years old. I really didn't think it was necessarily possible that first Olympic trials. I thought maybe in 4 years it could possibly happen, but he really made me believe that it was possible that year, and we got to work, and I saw myself chipping away at that goal, working my way up through the rankings, competing against some other great athletes, some swimmers that had been to the Olympics before, and he definitely was one that always had very subtle ways of showing me that he believed in me and just guiding me to that first Olympics. And I think not just making the Olympic team, that was the only goal we talked about, but he did so many little things that I think helped me then turn my attention to the Olympics, and I was able to believe that I could win that gold medal. So I'm really, really grateful for that. And yeah, as you said, I've had so many great coaches over the years. And the reason I wrote about each of them in the book is because I think it is a little unique that I've had 4 different coaches over the past 4 Olympic cycles, and over these next 4 years, I'm sticking with where I'm at. But I think it's great that I've had these different relationships with these different coaches, and I have gained something different from each of them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, for, again, all of these swimmers out there who are fearful sometimes if they change coaches or if they move or when they're going to college. I mean, one of the takeaways is you can kind of learn different things. Okay, to give them each credit.
Yeah.
So Bruce was a coach you had next. Am I getting this chronologically right? Okay. My takeaway is he told you to kind of think bigger a bit.
Yeah. So
what does that mean?
I see there's some nation's capital swimmers in so some of you probably know Bruce, who's still coaching at NCAP. I swam with them a few days ago. So I think coming off of London, I was this 15-year-old, and I'd won this gold medal, and it was already something greater than I ever imagined I would achieve in the sport. But right after London, I definitely had it as a goal to continue to compete at that level, and Yuri took a collegiate coaching job, and so Bruce came in and guided me for those next 4 years. And in 2014, we had a very similar goal meeting as I had with Yuri, and we were talking about my goals for the 2016 Olympics, again, 2 years in advance. And at this point, I had broken some world records and had won a lot of world championships. And we set 3 big goals for 2 years in advance, 2016. The goals were to go 3:56 or faster in the 400 freestyle.
That's very fast, in case
And
anyone's
at
wondering.
the time, to give context to it, at the time, my world record that I held was 3:58. So that was 2 seconds that we were talking about. In the 800 free, the goal was to go 8:05 or faster. And at the time, my world record was 8:11, so 6 seconds. And then to win the 200 freestyle, which at that point, I hadn't competed in the 200 freestyle at the World Championships yet. So it was 3 pretty ambitious goals that we were setting 2 years in advance. And I wrote down on my pull buoy, all the swimmers in here know what a pull buoy is.
What was your pull buoy's name?
My pull buoy had a name, Belky. That's a whole story too. That actually started with Yuri. But that was a pull buoy that was stolen from the Lost and Found. Anyways, I'm a thief, I guess. But I wrote these 3 numbers on my pull buoy, 5, 6, 5. The 5, 6 stood for 3:56, and the 5 stood for 8:05. And I had that on my pull buoy for 2 years. I saw it every day. And in Rio, I went 3:56, 8:04, and I won the 200 freestyle. And so I definitely walked away from Rio reflecting on goal setting and how powerful it is to write down your goals, to see them every day, to not be afraid to set these really big goals in advance and to work toward them. I think during those 4 years between London and Rio, that's when I really found my love of training. I think I always loved going to practice. I loved getting to the pool early and being there with my teammates. But I really loved seeing the improvement every day, the improvement every week, every month, every year, just always setting my sights higher in training. And I saw so clearly how that was reflected in my racing and in my performances at the competition. So that's what I learned during that Olympic cycle.
I mean, who needs a pull buoy to write goals on tomorrow?
Yeah,
This is the lesson
a piece
there.
of paper works
Or a
too.
piece of paper, or a buoy. You can name it. You just have to be named Belky. It can be named something else.
And none of my teammates knew what those numbers meant. I had one teammate that texted me right after my last race in Rio and said, I always kind of wondered what those numbers meant, and now I know, because I shared after my last race.
Amazing. Now, you know, people watching you may think it's been just easy for you to sail through and win all these medals. This hasn't been easy at every moment. And one of the stories you talk about, or the periods of time you talk about in the book, is COVID, when all the pools shut down, the country shut down, the world shut down. You were waiting to see what was going to happen with the Olympics. You and Simone Manuel had to just figure out where to train. At the time, your coach was Greg Meehan, right? Mm-hmm. Is it Meehan? Is that how you say his last name? Okay, good. Greg, and you had to figure out where to train. And that was tell us a little bit about that, Pierre, because adversity is something that everybody deals with, even people who are as successful as you. So how did you navigate that?
Yeah, it was a challenge, and I'm sure all the swimmers in here can relate, and I know everyone can relate to the pandemic and everyone's lives being upturned, and certainly I was very grateful for my health and for my family's health, and you know, just having to adjust training. I mean, that's not as difficult as many people. You know, not as difficult of a thing as many people had to deal with during that time. So I was grateful that I still had a goal to work toward. The Olympics ultimately were postponed, but there was about a 3-week period, or at least it felt like 3 weeks, maybe it was only 3 days, a period of time where everything was shut down, but we were still being told that the Olympics might happen in 2020. And so at that time, we were being told to just do the best that you can with training. And you tell that to some Olympic athletes, and the stress levels kind of start going up. And so we scrambled, and I was out at Stanford and in California, and my coach was able to get into contact with this wonderful family that had an amazing 2-lane, 25-yard backyard pool. And we thought it was maybe going to be a 3-day thing. It turned into 3 weeks, and then it turned into 3 months, where every day for 3 months I swam in this backyard pool with one of my teammates, and my coach came every day. So that was my little COVID bubble, and then Stanford reopened their facilities. We had the testing and all these different protocols that we faced. But the biggest challenge during that time was being so far from my family, and I talk about that a bit in the book. My family, just the support that I've had from them has been so instrumental to my success, my life, my happiness, all of those things. And so they weren't really able to come out to the West Coast given all the protocols and all the caution that we were taking. We were so worried about getting sick. I didn't want to be out of the pool for 10 days because any swimmer knows you're out of the pool for 10 days and you start at 0. So it was definitely a challenging time, but I had a lot of silver linings that I now look back on. One, I was able to hop back into classes. I had been taking a break leading up to the Olympics from my classes. So when the Olympics were postponed, I hopped back into classes. I was able to finish up my degree during that time at Stanford. And then the other great silver lining was this family that I got to know in this backyard. It was these grandparents, and then they had their daughter who would bring her 3 grandkids over to this huge backyard to play during COVID times. I mean, everyone had to have some outdoor playtime. So their outdoor playtime was running around the pool deck cheering for Katie Ledecky and Simone Manuel, because that's what we that's what we were to the kids.
Not bad.
We were Katie Ledecky and Simone Manuel. Go Katie Ledecky, go Simone Manuel. And they would cheer us on at practice. They would keep they had learned the phrase social distance, and it was wonderful. And they kind of became my family during that time. I actually got to see them a few weeks ago, and just the friendship that I have with that family is a beautiful thing. And Greg did such a great job of guiding me through that time. Just that extra year of training toward our goals, and having to change up and adapt our training to all the different things that were being thrown our way.
Yeah, no question. Everybody lived through that period of time and had different challenging experiences. Okay, after that, Anthony Nesty, who's still your coach today, you're going back to Florida to keep training. You talk about how he made your stroke more efficient. He made you more efficient, which is so interesting because at that point you'd won how many gold medals? And there was still more improvement to be done, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think I was drawn to go train in Gainesville, Florida after the Tokyo Olympics because, one, I wanted to be closer to my family, closer to this area. And 2, I wanted to train with some of the best male distance swimmers in the world. And for any of you that watched this summer, I trained every day with Bobby Fink, who broke the world record and won the gold medal in the 1500 freestyle. So it's a pretty good training partner. So I train with a great group there, and Anthony Nesty is a tremendous coach. He was a tremendous swimmer himself. He's from Suriname in South America, a small country, the only medalist ever from Suriname, and just such a humble guy and so hardworking. And I think we clicked right away when we first met and talked, and just his drive and his eye for my stroke and for wanting to improve and never being satisfied really has resonated with me and has helped me continue on in my career.
Okay, I've always wondered, and I promise, we're getting into the deep swimming nerdy things now. So we had to talk about the coaches because it's such an interesting part
You
of
were
your
a
journey.
swimmer, so you know all these
Guys,
things.
I was a very mediocre
No, come on.
college swimmer. But that being said, I know the vernacular at least. I loved every aspect of the nerdy swimming parts of this book, as I'm sure nearly everyone in this audience does. When you are training for hours a day, what are you thinking about? Are you doing math problems? Are you reciting poetry? Are you thinking about nothing?
All of the above.
Okay.
There's math involved because all of our sets are on intervals, and sometimes the coaches throw some hard intervals at you, or you have to do the math because the intervals are, you don't have much rest, and so you have to be prepared for when you're leaving on the clock. So there's some math, and then you're counting the laps, and then I'm usually counting my strokes because that's how I can tell if I'm swimming efficiently, if my stroke count is high or if it's low per 50. So yes, a lot of math, a lot of counting. And then we usually have music that plays during practice. Usually the coaches put on one of their playlists. Sometimes we have a say, sometimes we don't. It's always a question. And then I have great teammates. And so there's bickering, there's laughing, there's joking. Sometimes we're more talkative than others. It depends what day of the week it is. If it's a Wednesday recovery day, we might be a little more chatty. If it's a Monday threshold practice where we're not getting much rest on the wall, there's not a lot of talking. But we usually show up early. In Florida, it's called Gator time, where practice may or may not start 15 minutes before the actual start time. So everyone gets to the pool about 30 minutes before practice starts. And so we usually stretch and chit-chat on the pool deck, which is a great time because I bet a lot of the swimmers can relate that some of my best friends are my teammates, and that's what makes it a lot of fun to go to the pool every day.
No doubt. And I want to talk about a lot of them, a lot of the people you talk about in your book too. I remember watching you win your first gold medal. Who here remembers watching that race? Let's hear a hand raise, a cheer, whatever you may want it to be. I remember watching that and thinking, you were so young. I mean, what was going through your head when you saw the scoreboard in that moment? You talk about it in the book, but tell everybody here, what was that like?
Well, I think I touched the wall and I said, oh my gosh. But the clearest image that I have in my mind from that race was flipping at the 600 mark of the 800. So I had 200 meters left, and when I flipped, it was like waking up from a dream. The first 600 was completely a blur. I knew I was ahead, but I was kind of freaking out in my head that I was ahead. But I flipped at the 200 mark, and I said to myself, I have 200 meters left. What is this? I'm ahead. I'm at the Olympics. I start seeing the Olympic signage on the side of the pool, and it really starting to click in my head that I'm leading at the Olympics. And I said to myself, I have 200 meters left. I've done so many 200 freestyle races in my life, and I've got this lead. Don't mess this up. Don't mess this up. Just don't let anyone pass you. So I just kind of had this voice in my head the whole last 200 meters until I touched the wall, and at that point, things became a blur again for maybe 20 minutes.
Understandable. Has it changed for you? Because you were in Paris just a couple of months ago. Does your feeling when you finish at the Olympics, has it changed since your first Olympics?
I think so. I think a little bit. I think it has and it hasn't. I think there's still the same joy, and it definitely doesn't get old winning a gold medal and well, yeah.
I mean,
it doesn't.
Who can say that?
I mean, people ask me that. Does it ever get old? And it really doesn't. Just it feels like the first time sometimes when I touch the wall, and the excitement that I feel, sharing of that moment with my family and my friends, and seeing them in the stands and their reactions, that always hits me pretty hard, and it just is kind of an emotional moment for everyone. But I mean, certainly in London, that was a pretty unique one, just given that it was my first, given that nobody expected me to win that gold medal. I was able to visualize myself doing that, but I don't think anyone else really expected that or thought that was going to happen. So that was definitely a very unique experience. And then all the others have been pretty similar, I guess, in that feeling of joy and that excitement. And certainly I'm very hard on myself. So sometimes I'm not even happy with my time, or there's something that I felt like I could do a little better, but at the end of the day, a gold medal is a gold medal, and I'm I'm pretty happy with them, usually.
I feel like that's a t-shirt. At the end of the day, a gold medal is a gold medal. I mean, somebody make them out there.
I don't mean it like that. I just mean, I mean, as an example, my 2 gold medals in Paris, I think, were very different races. The 1500 free, I was really happy with the time. You can see me after the race. I was just ecstatic about the time. I felt like it matched how the race felt, and I just felt like it came together pretty well. And then the 800 free, I touched the wall, and it was more of a sense of relief. I wasn't as excited about the time. It wasn't a really great time in my head, but the goal going into it was to win that gold medal, and I knew I had put kind of a lot of pressure on myself, I think, given the history that I have in that 800 free race. I knew that no woman had ever won the same event at 4 straight Olympics, and the prelim of the race is 36 hours before the final of the race, and so during those 36 hours, I'm kind of just resting and thinking about the race, and during that time, you just start thinking of all these things, like, yeah, there's probably a reason nobody's won 4 straight, like, it's pretty darn hard. And so I kind of knew going into it that it was going to be hard. I knew I had great competition in that race, and so just the feeling in that race was much more relief initially, and then it turned into joy, and I got to share that with my family. But yeah, I would say those 2 races just in Paris kind of had 2 different reactions and feelings and emotions tied up in them.
Yeah, it's remarkable. One of the things that's also amazing about the book is that you really talk about your anticipation and your preparation for each of these races, how you think about each of the races, and your journey over so many years, which is a remarkable journey, just to restate. One of the things you talk about in the book, too, which I think I remembered from you talking about it, but I loved this story, is the first time you met Michael Phelps, which was not at the Olympics.
No, it was in 2003. He was swimming at the Nationals meet, the USA Swimming Nationals meet at the University of Maryland. And Michael Phelps is from Baltimore, but this was a national level meet that was in Maryland. And it was right during or at the end of the first summer that I had started swimming, and my brother and I were just about to start swimming year-round for a club swim team. And so my mom took my brother and me to this swim meet at the University of Maryland to watch Michael Phelps, who was rising through the ranks. He had been to 1 Olympics before. He had just started breaking all these world records. He was getting ready for the 2004 Olympics, where he won 7 gold medals. So we went and we watched, and after the night of racing, we went down the stairs to get as many autographs as we could from any swimmer, and we waited a little extra to try to meet Michael Phelps, and he walked out. He had his headphones on, he had his kickboard in his hand, and he signed our autograph. And he went off to his car, we went off to our car. And Just 9 years later, I was on the Olympic team with him in London, and I was in the ready room getting ready for my race. For those of you who don't know swimming, or even those of you who do, but at the Olympics, you have to, as a swimmer, you have to report to the ready room 20 minutes before your race is scheduled to go off. So I was this 15-year-old. I think I probably arrived 30 minutes before my race because I didn't know any better, and I didn't want to miss it, you know? And so I got there 30 minutes before, and Michael was swimming the 100 butterfly that night, his final of that race. And so he was in the first call room. There's 2 rooms. So he was in the first call room when I entered the room. And he gave me a high five and said, "Go have fun out there." And probably didn't mean a whole lot to him. I mean, he probably just wanted to give me a high five. But in my head, I was like, oh my gosh. Just 9 years ago, I was at this meet watching him compete. I had no idea that I would ever make it to one Olympics at that point. And here I am on this team with all of these swimmers that I looked up to for so many years. I got to spend training camp with all these swimmers for the month leading up to the Olympics, get to really know them. And that was just kind of the start of that night and what was to come.
Amazing story. Who knows who's met you recently? That's who knows. I love that story. We're going to get to as many of these as we can get. These are audience questions. I had one more question because you tell that story because you looked up to Michael Phelps, but you have become this tremendous mentor to so many people on future Olympic teams. And I remember, I don't know if others remember this, I'm really exposing my Olympics and swimming nerdiness here proudly. Watching I guess it was the 2021 Olympic trials where Katie Grimes finished second to you, and she was 15 at the time, I think, young, very young, and she looked very nervous, and you brought her to the interviews, and you just kind of put your arm around her and like guided her through it, and really cheered for how well she had done. And I raised that story because that's such a tremendous part of your story too, and how you've mentored people and really lifted them up and shined a light on their success too, which everybody doesn't do, by the way. What do you tell people who are new on the Olympics team and are nervous and are uncertain, or maybe they want to make their first Olympics? What's kind of the go have fun out there that you tell them?
I tell them, go have fun out there.
Well, that's good. That's fine.
That's one thing. I think the biggest thing when you get to that level is making sure that everyone feels like they belong at that level. I think some swimmers, when it's their first Olympics, they are kind of just there for the experience, or just thinking that they maybe didn't deserve to be there because they see all these other swimmers or some of the swimmers that they had watched at the Olympics in the past. But everyone that's there has earned their spot. They've gotten through the Olympic trials. They've competed against the nation's best swimmers, and they've earned their spot there. So that's always what I try to remind any of the young swimmers, and remind them that they've earned their spot there. They've put in all the hard work to get there. And I certainly, as I said, had such great teammates to look up to when I was that 15-year-old, and I want to be able to give that back to the younger swimmers coming up in the sport. And many of them are very mature and have it all figured out already, but they know that I'm always there for them if they need to ask a question or have an issue or something that they want to ask. I'm always open to answering questions, and it's different for me to kind of be on the older side of the team. In London, I was the youngest of the whole U.S. delegation, not just swimming, and then in Rio, I was still the youngest on the swim team. But now I'm one of the older ones, and I guess I'm old now, but I was at my high school earlier today, and we were doing some question and answer, and one of the high schoolers said that she asked me a question in first grade after the London Olympics, I guess. Maybe it was Rio. And she asked me the same question that she asked me in first grade, and I was like, oh my gosh. You're making me feel old, but I still feel young. I train with college swimmers and professional swimmers, so now the freshmen on the Florida swim team are 18 years old. They're almost 10 years younger than I am, but they make me feel young, and I can trash talk them back when I want to and all of that. So it's fun.
I can assure you, you're still young. Don't worry.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Absolutely. Okay. These are all audience questions. So Mason, if you're out there, this is your question. As an 11-year-old year-round swimmer, I love to swim. Sometimes the decision to go to practice versus play with friends or relax is hard. So true, Mason. Did this happen to you, and how did you overcome it?
It's happened to me at different points where the sport gets really, really tough. Maybe you don't feel like you're dropping time every time you race, or maybe you're at the bottom of your age group. If you're 11, you probably are at the bottom of your age group. You're probably in the 11-12 age group. And I think there are sometimes those tough times when you have to think about, what are my goals? What am I working on? And I think, you talked about my parents being great support for me all these years, and I think they did such a great job of not coaching me, and the best advice they always gave me was to talk to my coach and to set some goals with my coach, to talk with my coach about my next meet, about what technical things I can work on in training, and that's what always re-energized me about the sport. Whenever I felt like I was going through a tough period where maybe I wasn't dropping time, or maybe I wasn't seeing the time that I expected to see on the scoreboard at the end of the race. So I think that would be my advice, and I think my other piece of advice would be, I love the sport. I think it's so much fun. And now that I've been in the sport for all these years, I think I can look back and realize that there are different things that have made it fun at different points through my career. I think it's been the teammates, I think it's been the coaches, I think it's been the goal setting, the process, the joking around on the pool deck before practice. And I think my advice would be to kind of identify what you enjoy about the sport the most, and try to lean into that as much as you can. So if it's the being around your teammates aspect of it, try to spend more time with your teammates. It'll probably make you feel better. It'll probably make it even more fun. If it's the goal-setting aspect of the sport, then go out there and set some really ambitious goals with your coaches. Have some of those goal-setting meetings that I had with my coaches, and get really excited about your goals. For me now, what makes the sport fun is seeing improvement in practice and getting to race these great male distance swimmers every day. So when I show up at practice, I'm going to give them everything I got. And maybe I'm not going to go best time at the next meet, but maybe Bobby is. And seeing him break the world record was one of my highlights in Paris, because I felt like I got to see that every day. I felt like I got to push him a few days a week. Most days he beats me, but a few days I can beat him. I can keep up. So I felt like I was a part of that, and that's what makes the sport so much fun for me now. So I think if you're ever going through a period where you're questioning whether you want to go to practice or whether you want to keep swimming, try to think about what it is right now that is fun about the sport.
It's very, very good advice. Okay, Caroline asks, would you mind sharing your top pre-race and pre-training routines, superstitions, snacks, etc.?
Okay. Well, I've pretty much been doing the same kind of warm-up routine for my races for probably over 15 years now.
This is exactly what Caroline wants to know.
Yeah, so I usually get to the pool maybe 2 hours before my first race or my race on race day, and I get into the pool. I usually chit-chat a little bit because I like to be early, as I said earlier. So I chit-chat a little bit with my teammates and my coaches, have a little quiet time, stretch a little bit, and then I get in for my warm-up. I do about 2,000 to 2,500 in the water. I get out, I dry off. What are you laughing about? 2,500 is nothing. So I do that. I get out, I dry off, I put my racing suit on, and then I get back in the water. I only do about 300 to 400 at that point, and then I have to report to the ready room about 20 minutes before the race. As for food, I typically, before a finals race, so usually finals are in the evening at 5, 6, 7 p.m., I'll usually have some sort of dinner, maybe an hour before I go to the pool. And my go-to meal for, again, probably 15 years has been plain pasta, usually with olive oil or butter and Parmesan cheese. Just very plain, sits well. Good carbs, carbo loading, pasta pep rallies, those are always a big thing in summer league swimming. So, pasta is usually my go-to. I usually have a banana sometime before my distance races. It's not really a superstition, but I don't know, bananas are supposed to help you not cramp, so I don't know, mentally it helps, I guess, for the distance races. And that's kind of those are my pre-race go-tos. I usually do 3 claps on the blocks before I race. Don't know when I started that. I actually did not do that before my first gold in London because I was so scared that I wasn't going to hear the take your mark. So I got on those blocks and I got right down into position. I skipped the claps. So at that point, I realized there's no such thing as superstitions. I was fine without it.
Yeah, although the 3 claps sounds like it's worked pretty well.
Yeah,
maybe.
I do the 3 claps when
It's
when
good.
I
We can all watch that now. Okay, Wonky asks, who would win in a 500 freestyle? You or Caleb Dressel?
Ooh. That would be a pretty good race, I think. I don't know. Caleb has some good endurance, so I think he probably could pull it out. And he's really good at short course with the turns, so he probably could get me in a 500 free.
That's a very generous answer. I
No,
like it.
I think he would.
Okay, he's very good too, of course.
Yes.
Okay, Ken Kriebel, I'm sorry if I butchered your name, Ken. What does a day off look like for you? Are there ever days when you don't go in the pool and don't do any kind of weight or other training? You can read about this in her book, but go ahead.
Well, I took maybe 2 or 3 weeks completely out of the water after Paris, and I have been getting back into training over the past month and a half. But usually during the training week, I swim 10 times a week, Monday through Saturday with my team, and usually Sunday is off. But I wrote about in the book how I actually started swimming on Sundays over the last 2 years. I call it my Sunday swim, and it's not really a practice. I don't consider it an 11th practice. It's just kind of this time to myself. I found that I'm usually not very good on Monday mornings at practice. My coach calls it the Monday morning blues, and everyone has those, right? and so he suggested that I try swimming on Sunday and see if that helps my Monday morning practice. And sure enough, it did. And so I go to the pool most Sundays, and I swim usually 2,000 to 3,000. Again, that's not very much for me. And it's just a pretty relaxing swim. And I wrote about in the book how I think that has kind of allowed me to almost practice what swimming is probably going to be like once I'm done with competitive swimming, because I think swimming is such a great sport, such great exercise, such a great activity that you can do for many, many years. And I would like to have that kind of relationship with the water where I will want to continue to swim beyond my competitive days. So on Sundays, I challenge myself to not look at the clock, not hold myself to any times, and really just try to enjoy being in the water and swimming my laps.
I love that. Okay. This is from Priya William. What is something people would be surprised to know about you?
Oh, I mean, I think I shared a lot in the book. I don't think I have very many secrets. I mean, let me think. I mean, I didn't know how to ride a bike until I was in college. I'm trying to think. I have my cousins here, and I'm thinking of all those days we spent in Williston and in Christmas, and Christmas time we would go sledding quite a bit. I've gone sledding in negative 30-degree weather. I don't know if that's surprising. It's North Dakota. Any of you that have been to North Dakota probably know it can get pretty cold. But no, I'm trying to think. Other hobbies. I played the piano. I did Irish dancing for about a year or two.
That's surprising.
A little
I think.
surprise,ing
Yeah, Irish dancing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Read the book. You'll find out more.
Yeah.
You'll find out more about Katie.
I don't know what might surprise you. You never know.
Okay, Katie is still training, so she's going to have to go to bed at some point. So this is going to be the last question.
Oh.
There are so many good ones in here.
Does anyone in here have early morning practice tomorrow?
Oh, that
the
too.
GW team.
The GW team, other people have early morning practice.
Oh,
These
yeah.
ladies over here.
All right.
Everybody has to go to bed so that they can get up and have chocolate ice cream, obviously.
There you go.
Obviously. So we're going to end on a reading question because we're here to talk about your book. And this question is from Eileen Rice, who also happens to be the reading teacher at Little Flower School.
Oh, yeah.
And she says, I remember that you were an avid reader. Mm-hmm. Can you share a few titles of books or authors who influenced you and helped you become the amazing woman you are today?
Oh, wow. Well, right now I'm reading Jen's book.
Oh.
Those of you in here should all read Jen's book.
That's it. I'm done.
No. But yes, I've always loved to read, and I think it's so important to read. We used to have, I think it was called SRA or something, where you got is that still a thing? I don't know. When we were first learning how to read, they had these little books that you would read, and you would get stars, and you would try to. I'm competitive, I guess. I tried to. But I love reading. Growing up, I loved mysteries, so I loved Agatha Christie books. And then as I've gotten older, I've loved memoirs. I studied psychology in school at Stanford, so I like reading about psychology, learning more there. I minored in political science growing up in the DC area. I keep up with the news. I like to keep up with current events, so I'm always reading something. So I've had different interests over the years. I'm in a book club in Florida.
What are you reading right now in the book
We're not
club?
reading a book right now. We haven't met in months. I've been away, but that's not why we haven't met. Everyone's been busy. But I think we're meeting in a few weeks, so we've got to pick a book. But yeah, I love that. I've gotten to form a great community in Florida, and just at the end here, I want to use this as an opportunity to say thank you to everyone in here. Just walking out, I could very quickly see so many familiar faces from Palisades, from Little Flower, from Stone Ridge, from NCAP, Montgomery County Swimming. So many of you have been a part of this journey with me, and whenever I win one of these, I think about all of you. These medals aren't just mine; they're all of ours. I'm representing the U.S. I'm representing this D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, and I'm always thinking of all of you that have been a part of this journey. Wherever you've fallen along my journey, you've been a part of it the whole way through, each one of you, and I'm really grateful for all of the cheers and all of the support that I've felt all these years, and especially in Paris, and I'm gonna need some more support over the next few years while I try to make it to LA, and hopefully I'll make it, and hopefully maybe there's some swimmers here today that will be at Olympic trials competing in 2024 or 2028. Yeah. Man, my years. Time's going fast. So it would be great to see a lot of you in LA. It would be great to compete in a home Olympics. And again, thank you so much for supporting me. Thank you for taking an interest in my book. And I hope you all enjoy it and can take a little bit away from it, whether you're a swimmer, whether you're a swim parent, whether you're not a swimmer. I hope there's something in there for you, and again, thank you for coming tonight too.
Thank you. I know everyone here I know is so proud that we all claim you as the hometown girl. You always will be at every Olympics. And you can support Katie by buying her book for every friend and neighbor and extra books. Thank you, Katie, for being here. We're all cheering for you. It was such a pleasure sitting down with you. Everybody here is rooting for you.
Thank you.
As you plan the next couple of years.
And thank you to Politics and Prose, too, and GW for putting tonight together. Thank you.